All right, we're going to get started this morning. I want to thank everybody for joining us today for our webinar, ICSC RECon 2019, Navigating the Big Show. I'm going to go ahead and get started, as I said, and we've got myself, Aaron Farmer. I'm the Senior Vice President here at the Retail Coach. We are excited to host this webinar. It's really hard to believe ICSC is less than 2 months away. ICSC RECon is, and if you're like us, you're probably scrambling to get ready and wanted to get an early start on the show this year with setting up meetings and meeting with prospects and those sort of things. So I want to thank you for joining us. We've got Dave Quinn, who's the Interim Economic Development Manager in Fairview, Texas, joining us today. Give you a little bit of background about Dave. Dave is a seasoned, certified economic development professional. He delivers a range of training and coaching services for economic development agencies and their executives. Before creating The Solutionist, which is an online economic development mastermind community, and also helping found Day One Partners, a collection of the country's best-known public-private interaction specialists. Dave served as the vice president of the Frisco, Texas Economic Development Corporation. At the Frisco EDC, he helped lead in one of the nation's fastest growing cities. He delivered about 58 projects, totaling 21 million square feet of potential development and 43,000 potential jobs, with the total capital investment of over $3 billion since 2015. So Dave, want to thank you for joining us today.
Aaron, happy to be here. Thank you for allowing me to come on and share some knowledge with you.
Awesome. Well, a couple of things I'll mention real quick as we get started. If you'll see the GoToWebinar control panel, there's a question box kind of in the the bottom right corner of that control panel. And as we go, if you have questions, if you'll fill out the question box, Dave and I'll keep an eye on that, and we'll try to get to all of the questions throughout the webinar here. We'll also be recording the webinar. So if you have any questions, or if you have anybody you want to share this webinar with, maybe a council member or other staff members, we'll make sure and get a copy of this, the slides, and also a recording sent over to you after the webinar. So we'll knock that out. But we're going to jump into this here and really get started. For those of you, I was looking kind of at the background of some of the attendees we have on today, and for many of you, I noticed it's your first time to attend ICSC RECon. And if you've been to ICSC events across the country, RECon is the largest. Typically, there's somewhere in the range of 30 to 45,000 attendees at this conference. So it's very important to be there. It's a chance to get in front of retailers, developers, restaurants, entertainment users, you name it. If they're in the retail real estate business, they're going to be at this conference. Now, from a registration fees standpoint, you can see on the screen here the member versus non-member rates. There's a pretty big difference. They're about half the price if you're a member compared to a non-member. And many of the attendees today are public sector organizations on this webinar. So maybe it's a city or municipality, or an economic development organization or economic development corporation. ICSC does something pretty neat. If you are one of those public sector organizations, you can actually become a member of ICSC for only $100. So if you're not already a member of ICSC, I would really recommend you become a member for that $100 price, and it gets you the member rates into these conferences and also regional conferences throughout your region, throughout the country. So I wanted to point that out. So if you're not a member, I would try to become a member today or very soon of the organization. Not only does it get you the member rates, but they send out articles, they host webinars themselves that really focus on the retail industry. So I would recommend you take a look at that. So RECon is May 19th through the 22nd. So that's a Sunday through a Wednesday. Like I said, less than 2 months out. And I wanted to point out the schedule here really quick. It is, like I said, Sunday through Wednesday. Not a tremendous amount happens on Sunday. Sunday, that's when we go. That's when we get registered. That's when we set up our booth. So I would recommend you register on Sunday if you can. Now, you can register throughout the conference. So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, you do have the option to register there. But Sunday, they also host a reception towards the end in the evening. There's also some continuing education. There's also some classes talking about retail trends, what to expect. So on Sunday, there are some things happening there, but really the meat of this conference is Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And that's really when the deal making takes place. So that's when the retailers, that's when the developers, they're at their booths and they're making deals. They're having meetings with potential clients, potential cities. They're having meetings with potential developers. So really, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, like I said, is where the meat of that happens. But really, even breaking it down further than that, Monday and Tuesday are really the days to focus on. It's 8 to 5 on each of those days. So it's important to be there for those. And then Wednesday is really when everybody starts to wind down. So not nearly as many attendees there. I would guess you probably have a third or a fourth of the amount of attendees on Wednesday that you do on Monday and Tuesday. So that's a little bit about what the schedule looks like there. Now, also looking at the convention center, the Las Vegas Convention Center is where this ICSC conference is held. If you've never been to Vegas before, you've never been to the conference center, it doesn't look huge by the map looking at it here on the screen, but I will tell you this is a big venue. There's 3 different halls that make up this conference. So you've got the South Hall, you've got the Central Hall, and you've got the North Hall. And I'd venture to guess it's probably a quarter-mile walk at least from the South Hall to the North Hall. So as you're kind of planning out your days and what you're going to do there, it's very important to manage your time and make sure you give yourself enough time. If you have a meeting in the South Hall, you have time to get to the Central Hall for your next meeting. It's we are in the North Hall. Hang on, we might be having some technology issues here. Let me get back on here real quick. We're back. As you know, there's bound to be a technology issue at some point when you're doing a webinar. So we should be back now. But North Hall, this is where we're located. You can see the R where we're located here. In the past, there were not as many retailers and developers that were part of the North Hall. However, there are retailers and developers here, especially the emerging brands. You'll see up in the top of the screen here, top of the North Hall, there are quite a few emerging retailers and restaurants here. So you definitely want to spend some time in the North Hall. And again, you can see where our booth is located. Now, the Central Hall, this is where a lot of your developers and brokers are focused here. Not as many retailers, but a lot of the developers and brokers there. So you can see JLL at the top left here. This is a big hall as well. So you definitely want to spend some time in the Central Hall as well as the North Hall. And then South Hall. This is where the majority of those existing retailers that have been ICSC members for a large amount of time, this is where their booths are at. So the South Hall, you can see it here on the screen, but make sure you're spending a third of your time in the South Hall, a third of your time in the Central Hall, and then a third of your time in the North Hall as well. Very, very important to do that. So Dave, you have anything to add on that? I know you and I were talking earlier before the webinar about how important it was to wear comfortable shoes. Anything to add on timing or anything like that from that standpoint?
No, I would just echo what you said. Is you have to come prepared to walk a lot, even if you're just flying through and handing out cards and trying to get a feel for the show, especially on your first time out. I think in Frisco, we were walking 7, 8, 9 miles a day. Of course, we had meetings booked like every 30 minutes, but it was like a battle plan. We knew exactly where we were meeting, and we tried to cluster our meetings in the same hall so we weren't crisscrossing the show. Because if you're not careful, you'll use a lot of valuable time just going from one hall to the next. So really, when you're going out there, develop a battle plan, if you will, of how you're going to attack it. Because you'll get out there and you'll be overwhelmed, and before you know it, the day's gone and you will have only done half of what you wanted to do. So I can't echo again, comfortable shoes. It's not about fashion in Vegas. Everybody just knows that it's a lot of walking. So you'll see guys with suits and tennis shoes on. It's about being comfortable and being able to move around as fast as possible.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave. As we kind of get started here and kind of looking at some tips that we have for the conference and really how to have a successful show out there, the first thing I want to talk about is setting realistic goals. And Dave just mentioned having a battle plan, and I will just echo what he said. You've got to have a plan when you go out there. You've got to have a strategy when you go out there. Many municipalities I see make the mistake of just attending and not trying to set up meetings ahead of time, not trying to have that battle plan in place. So number one, you want to set realistic goals. So meet people and make connections. That's the goal here. You're not necessarily going out there to make a deal with a retailer or a developer. You're looking to build relationships. It's networking. We'd recommend attending all social functions they have out there. So a lot of the brokers, a lot of the developers in your community, they'll have receptions. It could be on Sunday night, it could be on Monday night, but those are good ways to really have some good conversations with potential prospects for your community. And then we recommend attending some of those educational seminars and workshops we talked about. A lot of those happen on Sunday, but they do happen throughout the days on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So, a lot of good things such as insight into the retail industry, what's happening there from a trend standpoint. Public-private partnerships is one of the things I've seen on there this year, with a couple of topics related to that. So want to emphasize that as well as far as what you can do out there. But again, set realistic goals. And then one thing I don't know that I can mention enough is manage the expectations of your council and your boards. If you've got council members or you've got board members that are attending this conference with you, make sure you manage their expectations. Just like I talked about in the beginning, you're not going out there to make a deal. You're going out there to network, build relationships so that you can foster that relationship. You can get a deal to happen later in the year. So we'll say that one more time just to emphasize it, but manage the expectations of your council and your board. Number two deals with preparation and knowing your market. You're going to be sitting down with some retail and real estate professionals that deal with municipalities all over the country. They have to make deals to be successful. They have to open stores and communities to be successful. Well, it's up to you to go out there and sell and pitch your community. So number one, you've got to know your market. You've got to know what your demographics look like. From a community demographic standpoint, but really from a retail trade area standpoint. And I'll emphasize that, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but having an up-to-date information on your retail trade area is key. Where are you as a municipality pulling people from to shop and eat in your community on a regular basis? As a retailer and as a developer, we don't care as much about your city limits population. If you're only a town of 4,000, that probably doesn't sell us on your community. But if you're a trade area of 40,000, that's going to open some eyes. So we're going to talk about the trade area here in just a second. Know what retailers are in your community. Maybe have a map showing where other retailers are located. Know what properties are available. Well, one of the questions that you'll get at this conference is, what sites are available? We like your community. What sites are available? So make sure you have make sure you have an awareness of the vacancies in the community. Make sure you have an awareness of planned developments in the community. And then also, really focus on those retail categories that could be supported in your community as well. And then also, again, strengths and weaknesses over your competing communities. At the end of the day, you want to be able to sell your community in 3 minutes or less. You've got to convince them that there's an opportunity, that you're making a sales pitch to these retailers and developers, and you really have to, again, convince them that your community is where they need to be. So I talked about the retail trade area and really how important that is. One of the ways to do that is something that's new, and it's a cell phone analysis. So 5, 10, 15 years ago, and even later than that, even farther back than that, we were using radials. We were using drive times. How many people live within a 10-minute drive time of your community? Nowadays, there's things out there like a cell phone analysis. You can see one on the screen here for a community that we're able to tell without a shadow of a doubt where people are coming from to shop and eat in your community. So as you're preparing for the show, make sure you have that accurate trade area information together, just like what we're looking at here on the screen. So if you have questions on that or need help on that, let us know. We can definitely help you with that. But definitely pay attention, know this information, have what the retailers and developers are looking for. One of the recommendations I would make is to have an iPad or at least a personal binder of your information on your community. So, a location map, a demographic profile, a retail trade area map. You want to have a binder with you or at least an iPad so that as you're sitting at one of these tables, you have the ability to really look at that, be able to pull up sites, be able to pull up your database of sites. So if you don't already own an iPad or some kind of tablet, or really have a personal binder of market information ready to go, you definitely want to make sure you have that and it's ready. Dave, I know in the past when you've gone to conferences like this, you take an iPad typically with you. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've really done it both ways. In Frisco, we actually had someone help us carry a binder. One thing I would point out is to make it as visual as possible. You're not trying to put the whole kitchen sink in there. It needs to be something that's very quick, because you don't have a lot of time, so you want to be able to visually convey your story. So, put numbers in a way that like infographic type information, where the guy that you're talking or to the person you're talking to can visually anchor in where you are, your location, that sort of thing. The iPad makes it a lot easier when you're carrying it around, especially if you have a place like Frisco where you have lots of different developments and a lot of different information to carry. But it is really important to have concise, really easy digestible information at your fingertips, and it's worth the investment if you do an iPad.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'll add to that too, Dave, is you kind of said it, but keeping it simple as well. I'll see these different municipalities that, they know they're having a meeting with, let's say, Chili's, for example, at the conference, and they'll put together a 50 or 100-page packet of information and hand that over to Chili's. Well, chances are Chili's representatives have flown into the conference, and it's not easy if they get a bunch of those different packages from communities. So what I recommend is keeping it simple. A front and back flyer, so that you can just email out everything to them maybe the same day or right after that. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But like we said, iPad or binder, something so that they can visualize it and they can see it, is very important.
Yeah, you're just giving them a taste of the menu. You're not trying to give them the whole thing. You want to give them a taste, and then you can follow up later, and that gives you a reason to send additional information. And most of the time, if you're on their radar, they may even have more information about your city than you do. So it's just about getting top of mind.
Absolutely. One-page marketing flyers is something we recommend just to keep it simple as well. Here's a page. Here's an example of a community that we had put together, just a flyer to use at RECon. And, it's just got the main information on there. It's got the trade area for the community. It's got contact information for Daniel in the community. It's got the basic demographic information that a retailer or a developer would want to see. And then it's also got an existing retail map on there showing what retailers are already in the community, and then also a location map showing the location of the community and where it is in relation to a larger market. So just kind of echoing what you talked about there, Dave. But number 5, and it kind of goes back to what we mentioned in the beginning, but know your approach. Have a strategy ready to go. Don't go out to this conference just expecting to kind of fly by the seat of your pants and be able to meet with retailers and developers. You want to definitely structure your day. Maybe attend those workshops early and then focus on the leasing malls. So the leasing malls are the deal-making malls. Those are basically the South, Central, and North Hall that we talked about there. But target retailers and developers that fit your community. You can go on to the ICSC website right now and get a list of who's attending, but sell your community first. Make that hard pitch to sell your municipality and then sell specific sites. So again, having that database ready to go, but having a strategy in place. Maybe it's on Monday, you want to focus on the North Hall. Maybe it's on Tuesday, you want to focus on the South Hall. Whatever that case is, make sure you've got that approach down, that strategy down. they've got on their website right now, on the ICSC website at icsc.org, they've got a list of attendees, they've got a list of exhibitors. So if you're unable to secure a meeting with a retailer or a developer at their booth, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You do have the ability to walk up and at these booths and talk to retailers and developers. You might just have to stop by 2 or 3 times. So again, make sure you've got that strategy built. Part of that strategy needs to be inviting retailers and developers to your community. Again, at the beginning, we talked about this being a networking event. You want to meet with retailers and brokers that are active in your area, but then ask them to come to your community. It's a lot easier to sell your community when you have those brokers and those retailers actually in your community. So have those meetings. Get them interested, and then focus on getting them back to your community. What I like to do is I like to have my calendar with me, so I can say, hey, next time you're in the Austin, Texas area, I'd like to get you out here to my community to take a look. And how does this look? Does June 18th or 19th work for you? And taking kind of an aggressive approach like that, and going ahead and having your calendar there, it kind of forces the issue in a sense to get them to the community. So I think that's important. Dave, would you agree? Would you agree with that statement? I mean, you've been an economic developer for quite a while now, and would you agree that it's important to get them to the community?
Yeah, Aaron, you can't be timid out there, right? I mean, you're out there for a reason. They know you're out there for a reason. So being I hate to use the word aggressive, but being assertive and saying, I really want you to come to my community and show you what I'm talking about. It's one thing to see it on paper. It's a completely different thing to see it in person. So if you don't ask, you're never going to get them there. So make them feel wanted, and forcing them to make a decision, even if they say, well, I'm not sure, I have to go back and check my calendar. Even that then sets up, well, when's a good time to circle back with you? I know you're going to be getting back into that week. You're going to be busy. Is it okay if I contact you, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the following week? So taking an assertive approach is definitely something that you need to do if you're going to be successful.
Yeah. So you want to be aggressive. Like you said, you can't be timid out there. You've got to be aggressive. And the reason is you're competing with municipalities, not just in your region, not just in your state, but all over the country for deals. So thank you, Dave. You also want to target retailers that fit those gaps. So are you a community that you only have one clothing store, but there's a need for additional clothing stores? We'll seek out clothing stores while you're at this conference. Or maybe it's, a lot of communities we talk to they would like to see more casual sit-down restaurants. So focus on casual sit-down restaurants. But what you want to make sure you have is space. If you're going to talk to a retailer about coming to your community, make sure that you've got enough space for them. They lease space. Do they need 2 acres? Do they need a pad site? Make sure when you're doing this targeting that you have space for them. This year you might not have space for them, but next year with some things going on, you might. So you might want to just build a relationship, might introduce yourself, and then be able to come back to them year after year. And that's very important. Research and qualify those targets by making sure that their site selection criteria is a match. So for example, In-N-Out Burger, you can see on the screen here, they need about 50,000 traffic counts at the site they're looking at. They need a trade area of 60,000. They need median incomes of over 45,000. So if you don't fit into these categories, let's not waste your time, and let's not waste In-N-Out's time. There might be some other fits there, because down the road, 2 years, 3 years, as your trade area grows, In-N-Out might become a fit. So also know where their closest units are, located by distance and drive time. If there's one in the neighboring community that's only 2 miles away, depending on the retailer, depending on the restaurant, they might not be a fit. So definitely pay attention to that as you're looking at targets to go after at the conference.
Hey, Aaron, I'd like to just on that make a point that, this is about long-term relationships, and knowing your community and where you fit and being respectful of the person's time that you're engaging with is more important than trying to convince In-N-Out that they should come to your community, if they're not a fit. So a lot of times I know mayors and elected officials sometimes push really hard and they want to go after things, but they're not reasonable. And I think that's, knowing your community and where you fit, being respectful of their time. That way, when you are ready, when you do line up and you circle back, then you haven't really damage the relationship by wasting a person's time. Time is our most valuable resource in today's world, and these retailers don't have time to waste. So being respectful of that and knowing your community is a huge critical component of success.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for mentioning that, Dave, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about long-term relationships. You might not make a deal this year, but you might meet with a retailer 2 years, 3 years in a row, and that fourth year is when that deal happens. So you're exactly right. I did just want to point out real quick from a targeting standpoint, if you go to www.icsc.org/2019 RECon, they've actually got a list of attendees that are going to be there. They've got a list of exhibitors that are going to be there. So what I like about this system is they'll let you do a filter on there, they'll let you query, and you can actually, if you want to focus on retailers or entertainment retailers, you just select that filter and it'll pull it up directly for you. So did want to mention that, but that is the website you'll go to really see that. Number 10 here also deals with targeting, and it's very important when you're in these meetings is that you have your quick elevator pitch on your community. You only get many of these meetings, you'll only get a few minutes, or even if it's a walk up at the booth, you'll only get a few minutes to really garner the attention of the target. So you want to create an elevator pitch. Here's an example of one. Our community serves a regional retail trade area of about 9,500 people. Our prime retail area is anchored by Walmart, Kohl's, Lowe's, Hobby Lobby, Applebee's, and others. But there's still about 8.5 million in unmet restaurant demand. I feel we are a great fit for Chili's. Your closest unit is 25 miles away in Madison. Can I get 10 minutes of your time to show you our community and really 2 sites that might be of interest to you? So you're in this kind of quick elevator pitch, you're taking care of those previous tips we talked about, but it's a quick elevator pitch. You want to get their attention because, again, you're competing with other retailers, other restaurants throughout the country, and it's really important to be able to do that. So you want to have that elevator pitch down. Dave, I just having attended conferences with you like that before, I know you plan and you prepare ahead of time, and you typically have your elevator pitch ready to go, right?
Yeah, it's all about crafting the story of your community, right? And knowing, and it may shift. You can't just have one depending on the retailer that you're looking at, right? So if you're looking at a food or clothing, different things matter to different people. And so utilizing your resources through the retail pitch, that's one of the things you guys taught me early on was what sells, what's the key numbers that gets people's attention. You got to remember they're getting bombarded all day long by people pitching them. So you need to be able to pitch them in a language that is going to grab their attention and tell the story of your community in a really short piece of time.
Yeah, absolutely. This next slide, continue to deal with target. I'm just going to hit on something we talked about again, but pay close attention to hall location and floor address. It's an easy 10 to 15 minute walk from the South Hall to the North Hall. So as you search through the ICSC website, you see where these exhibitors are located. If you've got a meeting in South Hall, make sure you don't plan up too close there. But you want to work the floor methodically. You want to identify the site selector for your geographic area and get business cards. I can't emphasize that enough. Even if you don't meet with somebody, typically these booths that the retailers have set up is they'll have their business cards out there, and it'll list out whose territory is whose. Get those business cards. It's very important to know what territories these site selectors represent. Even if you do not meet with them, grab a business card. It gives you a reason. It gives you an opportunity to follow up with them the next day or the next week. So make sure and get a business card. One thing that I wanted to hit on as well is the most productive time for drop-ins is on Wednesday. So typically Mondays and Tuesdays, these retailers, they've got their developers have their schedules laid out pretty, they've already got those schedules laid out. So Wednesday is a very good time for drop-ins. So if you don't get a chance to talk to somebody on Monday or Tuesday, make sure you're there from 8 to 2 on Wednesday. A lot of people do go home on Wednesday, but I will tell you, I've had some of my most productive days on Wednesdays. Just being able to walk up to a booth and just informally talk to somebody, very important so that you don't fly home too early. Wednesday from 8 to 2 is an important time. And then follow up. Follow up is critical. If you met with a retailer, whether it was planned or a drop in, what we like to do is we like to email a short thank you note the same day. Now, we also do handwritten thank you notes to a lot of retailers, developers, and clients that we talk to. It goes a long way. They remember you when you do those sort of things. So what I like to do is after the receptions, I'm back in my hotel room about 9 o'clock on Monday or Tuesday night. I'm actually got my computer out and I'm emailing thank yous for meeting with us. You want to stay top of mind with these retailers and restaurants. And, if it makes sense, if it's applicable, make sure you have that site information ready to go. If you were talking to a retailer and you said, hey, we'll send over to you a couple of sites that work, being able to send those over immediately, again, keeps it top of mind there. Dave, you are a master at following up and staying in touch with people. Do you have anything to add on that?
Well, I think you prepare ahead of time to make it really easy to follow up. So I might have a stack of thank you cards with some general, thanks for visiting with me today already done. And then that way I just have to sign it and put in the mail. It's really cool to get when they get back to their office on Monday morning and they have a handwritten note from you. That means you had to mail it while you're in Vegas. Even better if you have little postcards. It doesn't have to be just grab a stack of Vegas postcards and just write thank you on it and drop it in the mail. And then, as you said, have information already stored somewhere that makes it really easy for you to share, so that you don't have to go looking for it when you get back to the office and try to find it. Create some either a Google Drive or Dropbox packet shareable files that you can just click and drop from your phone even, and you don't even have to have a computer, and do that right away. I think that's the key, is to make it quick and easy.
Absolutely. Name recognition is very important. So what you want to do is you want to keep your name and your community's name in front of the retailer, in front of the developer as much as possible. So doing that with the follow-up card, follow-up email, like Dave said, just really being prepared. Now, I will tell you not to get too disappointed. You're going to hear a lot of no's at this conference. A retailer, they might not be interested now, but you never know what their expansion plans will be in 6 months or a year from now. Good example would be Old Navy. A couple of years ago, Old Navy, it seemed like Old Navy was going away. They were struggling, trying to figure out what they were going to do going forward. But now they're expanding rapidly. They're one of the fastest growing retailers. So be persistent. Don't get too upset if somebody shoots you down pretty quick. Again, you're building those long-term relationships that Dave and I have talked about. But it's a slow process. But if you stick to it, if you follow kind of our game plan here, it works. So again, be persistent, but not pesky. And like Dave said, you've got to be aggressive. You can't be timid out there, and you'll see success. So I want to kind of wrap this up. We wanted to keep this at about 30 or 35 minutes just because we know your time is valuable. But we did have a couple of questions come in already. And on the question box, if you have questions now that we're coming to an end here, if you'll type those in, we'll be sure to answer them. But Dave, I'm gonna kick us off here with a couple of questions I saw come in. First question was a pretty easy one. It says, what do you wear to this conference? I've never been to the conference before. What is the dress attire? What does that look like? So I'll try to take a stab at that. This is a little bit more of a formal event. Even though we are in Vegas, and it can get hot out there this time of year, a lot of your retailers and a lot of your developers in particular, and really brokers as well, they'll be wearing suits. They'll be in a dress suit. So it is professional attire. However, as years have gone by, it's gotten a little bit less professional attire wise, if you will. You'll see some of the communities out there that maybe will have a branded polo shirt with their municipality on there. But like Dave said, you want to make sure and you wear comfortable shoes, because you're going to walk 7 to 8 to 10 miles a day at this conference, and you want to keep it comfortable there. But I think typically you want to dress to your audience, and like I said, a lot of these developers and brokers that are out there are going to be in professional attire. Dave, does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, so I mean, we didn't do suit and tie. We did a suit with no tie,
Yeah.
Maybe on Wednesday we did slacks and blazers, a blazer or something like that, or sport coat. But you want to look presentable, but you also don't need to be all buttoned up. And I mean, it's a long, hard day, so you want to be comfortable, but you don't want to look like a slob either. And if you wear branded, if your community is having a booth, and you wear branded apparel, then that's fine too.
Yeah, absolutely. Another question that came in here is what about the so the question is, what is your strategy to meet with developers and not just retailers? And all I want to emphasize that, years ago we would just focus on retailer recruitment, and nowadays it's very important not to just do that, not to just focus on retailer recruitment. You have to focus on developer recruitment, and what you want to do is you want to identify developers that are active in your region. So let's say you're in, Colorado. Well, you want to focus on Denver area developers and maybe into like the Salt Lake City area, maybe some of the Dallas, Texas developers. You want to focus on developers that are active in your region. And the reason we've started over the last 5 to 10 years focusing on developer recruitment as well is, think of it this way. Retailers typically need somewhere to lease, or need a development to lease, or they need a developer to build their building for them. Well, developers typically need retailers, whether it's to lease or the developers want to build the building for them. So you kind of have to marry the two together, the retailers and the developers. So do not just focus on retailer recruitment, focus on developer recruitment as well. And again, focus on those developers that are active in the region. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and you're on the east side of DFW, look for developers on the east side, but also look for developers that are active on the western side of the community of DFW as well. So really be aggressive, really pay attention to developers that are active in the region, and get those meetings set up with them, meet with them at the conference as well. Dave, y'all had a lot of success, I know, in Frisco and also in some of the other communities you were in working with developers. Is that right?
Yeah, so really what we did was partner. If we had development already on the ground, our role was a supportive role for the developer. A lot of times we would ask the developer which retailers they were going after, and then we would target those same retailers and really sell the community, and then as a support role. So we know a lot of times how to sell our community better than the developer does. The developer knows how to sell their development specifically. So what we did was we found out what retailers the developer met with, and then we would come in after the developer and strengthen their case by telling our story as a community. And really that's where our success really started to take off, was when we partnered with developers and became a support role for them and understood exactly what our role was in doing that. Every now and then there's a specific retailer maybe that we wanted to go after. But after the ball got rolling, it was really about how do we support the development that's already in town and help them land the retailers.
Absolutely. A couple other questions that came in. The question was, is RECon a place for a smaller city that may be unlikely to attract larger mainstream national retailers? My answer to that is RECon is not a place for smaller communities, especially those that, if you are having trouble landing some of the national retailers, I would tend to stay away from RECon, because most of the retailers, most of the developers that are going to be there are more focused on kind of medium to larger communities. Now, that's not saying you won't have success if you go out there, because there are some of those, but my focus for a smaller community would probably be more focused on the regional ICSC conferences. So maybe depending on the region you're in, they've got them in Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, Denver, Los Angeles. That would probably be the approach I would take for smaller communities.
Yeah, the only caveat I would have with that, Aaron, is if there's a development already in the community, like in Bastrop, where we were a smaller community, but there was a developer already there. And so we were a supportive role for him. It wasn't, we weren't trying to go out and get specific retailers outside of his development necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to echo what you mentioned earlier too, try to partner with those developers in your community. Go talk to them. And, if they're going to RECon, hey, how can we help you out there? Can I sit in on the meetings with you? Is there something we can provide? Is there data you need? And really those sort of things. So absolutely. Um, just looking at a few other questions. How do we identify site selectors? My experience has been they're separate from the the company, and they are real estate brokers. So that's correct. A lot of these retailers and developers, what they'll have is they'll have tenant reps or tenant representatives that are maybe a brokerage company or maybe a site selector that are out there. A lot of that information you can find if you go to ICSC, if you go to the attendee list and kind of look at how they've signed up. For a lot of these attendees, they'll have a little blurb about who they represent and those sort of things. Otherwise, if you have some questions on that, I would say reach out to ourselves. I'm gonna put our email back here on the back slide here, info@theretailcoach.net. If you have questions about who represents a certain retailer, who represents a certain restaurant, just reach out to me and I'll try to help you get the information on that to make it easy on you. Um, just a couple more questions here. How important is it to schedule appointments ahead of time? And is cold calling on someone the best method to set up the appointment? So I will tell you, it is very, very important to set up appointments ahead of time if you can. Now, I will tell you, it's getting harder and harder every year to set up appointments with these retailers and developers. Maybe not necessarily cold calling, but actually emailing and asking for a meeting is typically the way we do it for our clients. Typically, what we'll do is we'll start out with an email. Maybe the next week we'll do a phone call. We really set up what we call a drip campaign so that if we haven't heard back from them by the second or third week, we'll follow up again with another email or another phone call. But I think a mixture of those, whether it's email, phone call, or even started to use some of the new sources we have out there, like LinkedIn is another way to send a message to a potential retailer. That's it is cold calling, I guess, in a sense, and that's how we're doing it. And then I guess the last question we have today is would it be possible to get a copy of this presentation? And what we're going to do after this session, probably give us till the afternoon. We're going to send out an email with a link to the presentation and also a link to the recording of this webinar. So you'll have that by the end of the day today. And if there's any other questions for Dave or myself, we're going to be monitoring info@theretailcoach.net. So if you'll email us there, if you have questions, if you'd like to meet with us at the Retail Coach, we'd love to meet with you at RECon. So we'd love to have a sit down with you. We'd love for you to just send us an email at info@theretailcoach.net. We'll get that scheduled with you. But Dave, I really want to thank you for joining us today. You've been a good friend for a long time and added a lot to this webinar and just with your expertise. So
Come on and share with you guys.
awesome.